I just keep thinking of like Johnny Appleseed
Yeah.
and some of these American folk tales that we're going to be reading with our kids this year
Uh-huh.
that are just folk tales. Like
Right.
they're not really meant to be about anyone real,
Yeah.
but they, are like possibly exaggerated versions of a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They have a lesson to them.
they have a lesson to them and they inspire.
Right.
There's something really distinctly American about those particular folk tales
Yeah.
that were from, you know, some of the early stages of American cultural development.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Stories that kind of define America and separate it from other places.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to say here too is that as I get into part two of this little talk here, is that I'm going to change it into no longer an American legendarium, but a Western legendarium. And the reason for that is multivariate, but I really believe that um, we have to go deeper than just America. I think
Yeah.
that we have to go just to the West, the Old West, and the Western civilization. And I've been very inspired by the Greeks and and Europe and even Roman places. But even before the Greeks, there's just some very influential stuff that happened for our culture back then. And I think we've forgotten so much of that stuff that we need. In other words, it's almost like we need a new foundation built on America. I'm not saying the Constitution was not good or that our founding documents were not good. I think that they were incredible genius works. And so we need to remember those things. But what I'm talking about is more the soul of the man, right? Is the way we think as Americans, which has been a lot of the problem is we're not thinking any longer in terms of Christianity and Western civilization. We're thinking in terms of like, well, how do we get our politics right here? Or how do we solve our community problems or culture problems here in the United States? How do we solve? Well, the way you solve them is by going back before America, right? Like foundational stones. Like, why did we care about freedom? Why was that important? Because what I'm seeing is a lot of people, even Christians and even conservatives and people that they don't even know why we're free anymore. Like they're skeptical. They've become skeptical even of the good things. Like they've become so damaged by so many of the philosophies and ideologies today that they no longer even believe in freedom. And if you can't believe in freedom, how can you believe in Americanism, right? You can't. So what the first Americans believed was a whole group of things that we don't even believe today.
Mhm.
So in order for America to exist, you have to believe a lot of that stuff. And that's what I'm discovering is that a lot of Americans don't even believe that stuff anymore. So how can they make America a better country if they don't even believe in freedom? Like it's so foundational. And so as a Christian, obviously we have a longer history than America as Christians. And one of the things we have is that we have freedom in Christ, right? But that means something. It's not just a term. It's not just embracing freedom in general, right? There's a whole understanding here that you go into when you read the epistles on Paul and how they got to where they're at in Acts, and before that with the Gospels, and before that with the Old Testament. It's not like freedom just came out, was just a Pauline invention. No. I mean, the Hebrews are escaping slavery in Egypt. They're going to freedom, right? So why are they going to freedom? To have the freedom to worship God in the wilderness, right?
Mhm.
So what were the pilgrims trying to do when they were leaving Europe? They were wanting the same thing,
Yeah.
freedom to worship God as they thought was the right way to worship God, right? So it was the same journey.
Yeah.
And we have the same journey today, but many people don't see it. They do
Yeah.
not see that it's the same journey. This is why I called it Media Moses, and why I said it's an exodus out of Hollywood. It's not an exodus out of America. It's not an exodus out of certain political things, whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's out of Hollywood. Why is it out of Hollywood? Because the culture guides all of these other things. So if you just change your politics, you've changed it for like 4 years. It has barely no impact, right? And that's what we keep getting wrong. We're not going foundational enough. We're not going back to the roots of why we embrace freedom. Why? And can a person who's not a Christian even be free? Because how can they have freedom in Christ? How are they having freedom to go worship God in the wilderness? They're not. So what is their freedom used for if not to worship God? Right? So these are important questions because the answer to that question will tell you why our society is screwed up. It's because they're being free to do naughty bad things. That's that's all they want freedom for, is to take rights from someone else and to harm someone else, right? And harm their community. They want the freedom to do that. Well, I'm sorry, but we don't have the freedom to do that. That's not we that's not why God gives us freedom. So God is not going to give us freedom to do all those things. And if we try to do it, we will fail, right? Because you're just trying to do whatever you want. Kids don't get to do whatever they want, right? So these are really important things to learn if you're trying to like understand what's wrong with our culture and you maybe even want to engage in culture creation, right? Later on, we'll talk about the Hebrews in the desert, right? On their exodus and the relevance of that, how they're basically engaging in culture creation. But they don't just do that. No, they have to follow what Moses says, and Moses has to follow what God says, right? And so they have to see God a certain way. And if they do that, if they can bring themselves to following God and obeying God, then God will illuminate, right, what makes their culture work, what makes a new society work, how to found a whole new nation.